Hello, all my fellow horror film fans. I'm Mike C. Welcome back into the Chrono Cabin. Yep, everyone, it is summertime. I'm sure you could tell by the way I'm dressed. Since it is summertime, I thought it would be fun to do a video on some great horror sci-fi movies that I think are perfect to watch during the summer months because they all kind of have a summer vibe to them. And by a summer vibe, I just mean most of these films that I'm talking about, they were filmed over the summer, so literally the landscape is a summertime background. So just like around Halloween time, there are movies that say, hey, it's Halloween. You see pumpkins in the background. Well, these movies just say, hey, it's summer. Now, all these movies you can put in the horror film category, but they lean heavily to the sci-fi side of the genre. And the reason I'm making it heavily sci-fi is because I think summertime and sci-fi is just synonymous. Let me give you for instance, when I was growing up as a kid, a lot of huge sci-fi movies released during those summer months. Some of the biggest blockbusters of the summer were sci-fi movies. Terminator 2: Judgment Day was the biggest box office hit of the summer of 1991. It released July 3rd, 1991. Alien released May 25th, 1979. Aliens, one of my favorite sci-fi films of all time, released July 14th, 1986. Independence Day released July 3rd, 1996. Star Wars released May 25th, 1977. Blade Runner released June 25th, 1982. And also, let's not forget the Twilight Zone series, and I'm talking about the one from the 60s. Now, when I was growing up as a kid, every 4th of July, one of the major networks would always play the 4th of July Twilight Zone marathon. And it was one of my favorite things. I love those old Twilight Zone episodes. If you've never watched any of the old episodes of the Twilight Zone, I'm talking about the Twilight Zone from the 60s again, you have to check them out. They were kind of revolutionary for their time, and the Twilight Zone really was a horror, drama, sci-fi series. There really isn't an episode of the Twilight Zone that I don't like. Now, if you don't have cable and you don't have TV anymore, most people don't, it's pretty hard to see this anymore, but there was a time when it was always prevalent, almost as prevalent as watching Jaws around the 4th of July. And yes, Jaws is a perfect movie. It's not really a sci-fi movie, it's a horror movie. Now, I generally don't like horror movies about fish, but I give an exception to Jaws because it's such a classic. Damn it, I say, those beaches will be open on the 4th of July. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about Jaws in this because obviously it speaks for itself. If you've never seen Jaws, you must check that out. It's a classic. And they always do play it around the 4th of July here in the United States. It's a very 4th of July movie. Now, finally, I just want to mention that I will have no spoilers in any of this video. So there are no spoilers. I'm just going to talk to you about what I like about the movies, a little bit of fun facts about them, and then you can go watch them. I do not want to ruin the plot for you. Some of these are older and you may have already seen them, but after seeing this video, you might want to revisit them because, you know, they're just great movies. And I found some newer ones, not necessarily newer, but I just found some that I hadn't seen before, and I do think they kind of fit into this category quite well. So without further ado, let's get on with the first movie. The first one probably needs no introduction, but I will introduce it anyway. This is The Lost Boys. Yeah, nothing says summer like vampires in Santa Carla, California. A single mother and her 2 sons move to a sleepy seaside California town after the mother recently divorced. As it turns out, this town is filled with vampires. That's right, everyone. It is a very cool vampire flick. Now, you absolutely cannot beat the cast in this. It stars a young Kiefer Sutherland. It stars the Coreys, Corey Haim and Corey Feldman. It also stars Jason Patric and Jamie Gertz. Now, an interesting little fact about this movie, the part that Jamie Gertz played was originally offered to Meg Ryan. Now, I'm not really sure what happened, if she maybe turned down the role or what, but eventually they offered it to Jamie Gertz, and I'm really glad they did because I love Jamie Gertz, and she was just great in all the films that she's done, but she's fantastic in this. Now, this was actually Kiefer Sutherland's first horror movie, and it was not his last dance with the horror genre. He also went on to do a movie called Flatliners, again with another great cast, Kevin Bacon, Julia Roberts. That one is a great one to check out wherever you can find it right now, because that was a really, really creepy movie, and it was very compelling. He also went on to do a movie called Mirrors, which I highly recommend because that was a creepy movie. You know, some people have like this phobia of mirrors. Well, I can see why after watching that movie. Now back to Lost Boys. The title is actually a reference to Peter Pan and Neverland, where the boys never grow old, hence vampires, because vampires don't get older. The film is actually set in the fictitious Santa Carla, California, but it was actually filmed up in Santa Cruz. It was actually filmed in a couple locations, but the main location was Santa Cruz. Now, I have actually been to Santa Cruz, and I've been to the very boardwalk where they filmed this movie. In fact, the boardwalk in Santa Cruz has almost become iconic because of this movie. Actually, it's always been an iconic place up there, and if you ever go to Santa Cruz, I highly recommend you go visit the boardwalk. It has an amusement park, and it's very strange how it's laid out because the train tracks come right up to the boardwalk and almost on the boardwalk, and it just sort of dances around it. And there's actually a train trestle bridge right across the way, which I actually walked across. And I did think that the train trestle bridge that they filmed in this, which is a very famous scene, was actually filmed up there, but I was wrong. They actually filmed the train trestle scene down in Santa Clarita, which is north of Los Angeles. And they also filmed some other locations like Palos Verdes, California, which is actually a very beautiful place. So you can't really go wrong with the California landscape here, and it was filmed during the summer months. Santa Cruz is very pretty, especially in the summertime. Now, this movie was indeed released in theaters on July 31st, 1987. Now, the music score was composed by Thomas Newman, and it is fantastic. He has about 4 decades of film composing experience, and I enjoy his scores immensely. The soundtrack to this is absolutely fantastic. It actually starts with a cover of The Doors, People Are Strange, and the cover is done by Echo and the Bunnymen. You may remember them. They were a popular band in the 80s and kind of into the 90s too. And also the title song, Cry Little Sister, has also become a very iconic piece of the soundtrack to this movie. I really think that this is a classic vampire movie, and I think it was actually groundbreaking in a lot of ways. Remember, this was 1987, and it was dealing with young teenage vampires. It was dealing with forbidden romance. Does it sound familiar? Yeah, if you're thinking Twilight or True Blood, I mean, yes, I think this movie kind of did it first. And I'm not saying that Twilight or True Blood kind of copied it, but you wonder if there was some kind of influence from this movie. It definitely viewed vampires in a bit of a different light, both as evil, but also as these young partying teenagers. Another inventive thing that they did with this movie is they made it funny. I mean, there's a little bit of a Goonies aspect to it, especially with the Coreys. The 3 kids are fantastic in this movie, and they really add a lot of the comedic element to this movie. So it's a nice mix of creepy and comedy, and it's just a perfect marriage. Now, if you do make it to Santa Cruz, California sometime in the summer, you may catch the film festival they have on the boardwalk every summer. And can you guess which movie they show first? Yeah, you probably guessed it, but they show The Lost Boys. And it's also a great place to go if you ever want to do a tour of various horror movie sites. You'll get a kick out of it because a large part of this was filmed at this boardwalk. So anyway, I highly recommend you check this movie out if you've never seen it, or if you haven't seen it in a long time, just give it a revisit because it's really fun and it's just a fantastic ride. The next movie I want to talk about is Vampires versus the Bronx. Yep, we go to summertime in the Bronx. That's a good time to be fighting vampires because you probably wouldn't want to be doing it during the winter months because New York in the winter, Bronx in the winter, it can be very cold. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about this movie because I already did a video, which you can check out here, where I talk about Vampires versus the Bronx extensively, along with another one. The video I'll also have linked below. It's basically 2 big city Netflix vampire movies that you can watch. At the end of the video, I also go into a little bit of why I think it is very difficult to make a vampire movie in this day and age, in this life cycle of the horror genre, as well as a little bit of the history of just the evolution of the figure of the vampire. But Vampires versus the Bronx is fantastic, and it reminds me of The Lost Boys. This is basically a modernized urban version of The Lost Boys. 3 young kids try to arrange a summertime block party so that people can donate money to try to save all the businesses that are about to be bought out from this real estate firm that is coming in to essentially gentrify their neighborhood. Now, it turns out that this real estate firm is run by vampires, and they are about to suck the life out of this community. This is just a really fun movie. I'm not going to do a creepy factor on it, although there is like a few creepy scenes in it, but this is more just the relationship of the 3 boys and their community and trying to save the community. But really, it is a fun movie. It's kind of a feel-good movie, and I really do stress that if you're going to make a vampire movie in this day and age, this is the way you got to do it. So make sure that you check this one out. In fact, this one will pair very nicely with The Lost Boys. So watch The Lost Boys first, and then watch Vampires versus the Bronx. Now, the next movie is Signs by M. Night Shyamalan. That's right. I think this may be perhaps the best movie that M. Night Shyamalan has done in his career. I might get a lot of flack for that. I understand, because he does have some good movies. M. Night Shyamalan has also been kind of hit and miss on a lot of movies. Some movies that he's done have just not been very good. They have not been received well. But I think Signs is probably one of his finest movies. I really do. I think it's the pinnacle of his filmmaking. He's a talented director, a talented writer, and I think he can totally do it. In fact, he's working on Servant right now, which is fantastic. So for all the movies that he's done that haven't been so great, I think Servant totally makes up for it. But at any rate, Signs, it is by far one of my favorite summertime movies to watch. This is definitely in the horror and sci-fi category. A small family lives on a rural farm in Buck County, Pennsylvania, which is right outside of Philadelphia. And one day a crop circle appears, and the rest of the movie just takes off. The rising tension in this movie is just done masterfully. There is just this air of anxiety and tension that just keeps slowly building and building and building. And part of this masterful rise in tension is due to the actors. It has a fantastic cast. It's got Mel Gibson, Joaquin Phoenix, and the 2 kids are absolutely fantastic. In fact, you will recognize Rory Culkin, who is wonderful in this movie. Both of the kids are fantastic. It's actually a very small cast. And yes, you do see M. Night Shyamalan in this movie, and his character is actually really interesting. He's not a huge part of the movie, but he is a big part of the backstory, and he does a great job. Part of what I really like about this movie is just seeing the family in their daily routines. Now, their daily routine gets completely turned upside down, but you see them try to maintain that daily routine to get their mind off of everything that's going on. And I think that overall, you just kind of get a sense of who the family is, who the characters are. It has a nice message, and it's very heavily based on family. And I remember seeing this one summer. My buddy and I were down on vacation in this beach community, and we decided to go see a movie. And we saw this in early August. And I remember we went in, and I didn't really know too much about this movie except that it had to do with crop circles, but I was pleasantly surprised. And so was my friend. We both absolutely love this movie, so much so that I've watched it every summer since. The score is just beautiful. It's done by the great James Newton Howard. He's easily one of my favorite composers, and the score is just perfect. It's kind of tense, but beautifully done, beautiful orchestration. This film is definitely a slow burn, but I really do think it's the perfect film. Everything about it, there's nothing really bad I could ever say about this film. At times, some scenes in this just give me goosebumps, so highly recommend watching this, and it definitely has that summertime vibe to it. You will see, but if you've never seen Signs, make sure you check this one out. Right now, you can stream Signs on Amazon Prime Video. The next film is probably not very well known, and a lot of you probably haven't seen it, but it's called Dark Light. This is from 2019, and this one is also currently on Amazon Prime Video. A woman returns to her family home with her daughter and soon discovers there are monsters all around. This one actually reminded me a little bit of Signs, but it has a little bit more action, I would say. It's got kind of similar characteristics to it. It's kind of about the family, but there's a little more action involved in this one. This one is not very well known. I kind of came across it, and I think it just fits well into this category of horror sci-fi for summertime. I wouldn't say it's a perfect film in any way, but it's definitely entertaining to watch, and I did enjoy it. It stars Jessica Madsen, who has appeared in Leatherface in 2017, and if you watch Bridgerton, which I don't really like Bridgerton because it's just not my thing, but if you watch Bridgerton, she stars in that, and that's actually a very big Netflix show. So if you decided to watch Signs and you like that, you'll probably like this movie too. I do think it's quite creepy. It's filmed really well. I have to say, when I started watching it, I felt like it was going to be a little cliche, but no, they actually did something kind of unique with it, and the ending was pretty satisfying. So I would definitely put this one on your summertime list. The next movie I want to talk about is The Arrival with Charlie Sheen. This one actually came out in 1996. Zane, who's played by Charlie Sheen, is an astronomer who discovers intelligent alien life, but the aliens are keeping a deadly secret, and they will do anything to keep Zane from finding out what it is. I have to say, this is probably my favorite sci-fi horror film of all time. It's my favorite alien sci-fi horror film of all time, and I know it goes a long way because the movie Aliens was absolutely fantastic, but I really like this movie. The plot is actually really good. You have to remember this was 1996, and I thought it was ingenious. It was a really great story. It's very compelling. In fact, I think it was Rotten Tomatoes that said it's an inventive take on the alien genre. It was primarily filmed in Mexico, and it was also filmed in Owens Valley at the Owens Valley Radio Observatory. Another thing that's very cool about this movie is, for 1996, the aliens in this movie actually look really great. Now, this movie was released May 31st, 1996, and then along came Independence Day that was also released in July 3rd of 1996. So that was really the movie that kind of took over the whole scene. That was the big blockbuster. But The Arrival was never really meant to be a blockbuster, but it's still, I think it was the better alien movie out of the two. This one was actually considered a commercial failure. It only brought in about 14 million, but it did have huge international success, and this one has become kind of a cult favorite among horror film fans. So I think over time this movie has actually made quite a bit of money. I definitely think this film is underrated, and I think it's underappreciated. It really dives into the conspiracy of aliens, and it's almost akin to something that you would see from The X-Files. Can't say enough about the plot in this movie. Now, I know Charlie Sheen has kind of had a rocky road, and you may not like him, but in 1996, this was kind of his prime comedy career. Now, he's serious in this movie. He's very good, but he also adds those little Charlie Sheen comedic moments. It's one of my favorite performances by Charlie Sheen, I'll just say that. So definitely worth a watch. This one's a little harder to find. You may be able to find it through Amazon Prime. You could probably rent it, maybe on some other streaming services. I don't know. I actually own a copy of it, but if you do find a way to watch it, I highly recommend it because I think you're going to have a really fun time with this one. It's like one of those little gems that has still lasted through the years, and I watch this every summer. Moving on, we go to A Quiet Place. Now, just to let you know, there is A Quiet Place and then there's A Quiet Place Part 2. I highly recommend that you watch both because Part 2 does pick up where Part 1 left off, but I'm mostly going to be talking about A Quiet Place. This is a terrifyingly suspenseful thriller where a family must navigate their lives in silence to avoid mysterious creatures that hunt by sound. Now, this was actually heralded as a must-see movie of the year in 2018. This definitely falls into the post-apocalyptic horror genre. John Krasinski and Emily Blunt star in this movie, and John Krasinski directed this film. And believe me, these films are fantastic. So as a director, John Krasinski is great. Also as an actor, John Krasinski is fantastic, so I give him props on these. Emily Blunt is also fantastic. Talk about rising tension. A Quiet Place is all about rising tension. Now, this was filmed in upstate New York, and it was mostly filmed in the summer months, as you will see by all of the green forest and surroundings. Some of the locations are really beautiful. And the sound in this, the sound was really amazing, and the sound is noteworthy because the whole movie is them being completely silent, because if you make a sound, these monsters will come find you. So what the sound department did is they really amplified the mundane sounds that we hear, like putting down a knife on a table, or a fork on a table, or moving a chair, scraping a chair. All these sounds get amplified because that's really the part of the challenge in this movie. The antagonist of the movie is sound, which I think is a fantastic idea. The creatures in this are actually pretty creepy as well. I really enjoyed it. They almost could fall on the sci-fi side of things, but I would say this is definitely more of a horror thriller rather than a sci-fi movie. A Quiet Place kind of falls into that genre of wandering horror where you have to set out and try to find some place of safety. So like a lot of zombie movies, you have people that set out into the wild and try to find their way to a camp or some kind of civilization where they can get help. Now, A Quiet Place is currently on Paramount Plus, and A Quiet Place 2 is actually on Amazon. But I do think both of these movies are going to kind of live on Paramount Plus, be it that these movies are created by Paramount. Now, one movie I want to quickly mention is The Silence, because if you liked A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place Part 2, The Silence is almost an identical movie, although it doesn't really fit into the summertime category, but I did want to mention it to you in case you really liked the Quiet Place movies. This one you'll like as well. It literally is almost identical, but it's unique in its own ways, and it has wonderful acting as well. Great actors and actresses in this. I do recommend it. You might want to watch it more towards fall because it does take place in a kind of a colder time of year. Moving on, we have The Devil's Gate from 2017. This one is on AMC Plus. I actually don't get AMC Plus. I saw this when it came to Amazon, so this is another one that jumps around a bit. Set in the fictional town of Devil's Gate, a federal agent teams with a local officer to investigate a missing wife and child. The trouble is, their investigation leads them to the unbalanced husband and his trap-filled home. And actually, you kind of start to think this movie is going to be one thing, but it turns out to be another. Now, critics didn't really like this movie. Across the board, critics were saying the film looks great. The creature in this looks fantastic. So the visual effects are absolutely fantastic in this movie, but it kind of lacks story. I really disagree with it. I actually like the story of this one. You'll just have to try it out, watch it, and see if you like it yourself. This one is actually pushing it a little bit when it comes to a summertime vibe because it's really supposed to take place in North Dakota. And North Dakota actually does have some very barren landscape. This was actually filmed in Winnipeg though, but it's a very similar environment. This one is listed as a horror film, but I really will say that this is a horror sci-fi film. So I think they kind of mislabeled it, and you'll see when you watch it. This one is kind of one of those that I came across and I hadn't heard of it before. I say definitely give this one a shot if you can find it streaming on one of your services. This one is definitely creepy, and I like the overall look of the film. Moving on, we have The Seed. This is a Shudder original, and it came out in 2022, so a little more recent. 3 young influencers head to the California desert to party and to film a once-in-a-lifetime meteor shower for their social media channels. What starts as a weekend away in a remote luxury villa turns into a psychedelic tale of horror, death, and alien invasion. And I do mean psychedelic, yes. I saw this one and I talked about it on one of my weekend watch and plays. This is going to be one of the weekend movies that I watch. And I was pleasantly surprised by it. Didn't know what to expect too much, but I did say that I didn't think it was going to take itself too seriously. I thought it was going to be kind of on the funny side. It definitely is. There are moments where you laugh, but it is quite dark and it's quite bloody. The little creature at first is adorable. and it grows up. This stars Chelsea Edge, Lucy Martin, and Sophie Vavasseur. And actually, I think the three of them hold up this movie quite well. Again, very small cast, which is kind of a thing that I think we've been seeing during the pandemic. I kind of wish they had smell-o-vision on this, because the way they describe the stench of the creature, I mean, it sounds exquisite. So it would be kind of fun to actually experience that, or not. Enjoy this one. Again, this is on Shudder. It is a Shudder original. The next two movies don't really need much of an introduction, but they are It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2. When children begin to disappear in the town of Derry, Maine, a group of young kids is faced with their biggest fears when they have to square off against an evil clown named Pennywise. Yes, Pennywise is probably one of the creepiest characters in all of film. Of course, this is based on the novel by Stephen King. In fact, I think these two movies are probably the best adaptation ever of It, which was a gigantic novel. It's a very long book, so it would have been really hard to make this into one movie. They definitely did a good thing by splitting them up into Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. Back in the 80s, they did come out with a television series, and it was okay. It was good, but it wasn't really great, and I don't think Stephen King was ever really happy with it. He's definitely happy with these two films. These two films are shot absolutely beautifully. The music in these films is probably one of my favorite scores in any horror movie or in any movie ever. The music is composed by Benjamin Wallfisch. He has definitely become one of my favorite film composers. Anything he does just sounds great. I really like his style. This is beautifully orchestrated. At times, the orchestra just soars, and then it brings you down into the darkness. In fact, this whole movie is kind of a roller coaster ride. Both movies are a roller coaster ride. You kind of come out of the darkness, and then you enter the darkness again. Pennywise is genuinely creepy. In fact, I will do a creepy factor for these two movies because I think it's well deserved. So, on a scale of 1 to 5 on the creepy factor, what say the Chrono Cabin algorithm? Yeah, 3.5, and I would say a 3.5 on both films. Pennywise is really genuinely creepy, and they really made Pennywise scary in these films. Pennywise will scare you. Now, this takes place in the fictional town of Derry, Maine, but it was actually filmed in parts of upstate New York and Toronto during the summer months. So they definitely have that summertime vibe that I'm talking about. It's just a beautifully filmed movie, so really, really love the locations on this one. And you know, to me, the novel, is really about facing your fears. It's also a little bit, I think, about how you can build up the fear in your mind so that when you actually face that fear, it's not as big as you once thought it was. So it's kind of an interesting story in that regard. I think that's really the underlying theme of It. Currently, you can see It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2 on HBO Max. I think it's just going to kind of live there. But I have seen It Chapter 1 on another streaming service, so just check around and you will find it if you don't have HBO Max. The last movie I'm going to talk about is Freaks. Now, this one isn't really a horror movie, although it's quite dark, but this is really more on the sci-fi side of things. This movie came out in 2018, and you can see it on Netflix. Hidden away by her eccentric father, a mysterious young girl uncovers frightening truths when she starts to make contact with the outside world. This is a Canadian sci-fi thriller. This one definitely has a bit of an ominous feel to it. However, it kind of reminds me of a cross between a superhero film and Stranger Things. So, good combination. Kind of a unique story, and it kind of keeps you guessing throughout. You're really wondering why the dad is keeping the girl trapped inside, and it all gets explained, but there's a very nice pacing to this movie. It stars Emile Hirsch, Bruce Dern, and Lexi Kolker. This definitely has a summertime feel. It was shot in the summertime, and it has an ice cream truck, so you can't get much more summertime than an ice cream truck. This one does really keep you on the edge of your seat at times. The visual effects are fantastic in this movie. Overall, just a great film, so I wanted to add it to the list. Now, there are a ton of movies that I could put into this category that I have left out. There are a ton, but then this video would be very long, so maybe I'll do a part 2 at some point. So I hope throughout this video you may have found 1 or 2 films that you might want to see. Maybe you found a couple that you've already seen, but you haven't seen them in a long time. You might want to revisit them. But at any rate, thanks for spending time with me. If you did like this video, give it a thumbs up or give it a thumbs down if you didn't like it. If you like my channel, please subscribe. You can also ring that bell for future notifications whenever I release new content. Until then, keep watching those horror movies and keep enjoying your summer, and I will see you soon.